Welcome to Modular Hippo, the channel where I'm trying to build a 36-foot aluminium sailboat to be off-grid, as well as blue water sailing and high latitude sailing. In this episode I am firing up my MultiPlus II, my Victron MultiPlus II for the first time, as well as my Cerbo GX. And I'm also starting to look at the winter advice for storing my lithium iron phosphate batteries. So let's take a look. So let's crack on from where I left off. The last time I needed to get some bolts and nuts for the Lynx distributor, as well as a 200 amp Victron smart fuse for the input of the MultiPlus. So I'm gonna attach this fuse as well as the cables. So let's take a look at that. So we now have the battery cables, the 485 amp cables, 70mm 2, attached to the Lynx distributor. So these ones are a little bit open and it's probably quite easily to bridge these by accident. So I've seen some blue covers, or some covers that you can 3D print, and I'm going to print them in the blue Victron colors and put something on here. We also have the 200 amp fuse in place, so I just need to get the incorrect 10mm lugs off the Victron MultiPlus II inverter cables and replace them with 8mm so that I can attach those two cables here. And then we should be able to test the actual inverter. If you didn't see the previous episode, then what I did, I put 10mm lugs on here instead of 8mm lugs. So I'm going to remove those and put some 8mm lugs on instead. Okay, so we now have the inverter connected, the minus and the positive, and we have a 200 amp fuse. Those are now going to the battery. It's positive, negative, and we should now be able to switch the battery on and see something happen with the inverter. So let's give it a go. Okay, back to the workshop after a week of holiday. So bit of a recap of how we left it. So I've connected the Cerbo battery to some 70mm 2 cables that now goes into the Lynx distributor. So in theory we should be able to put the cover back on here and start up the battery, and we should be able to use the on-off switch for the MultiPlus, and hopefully we should see something happening here. And what we might be able to do as well is connect this one to a female domestic wall plug and maybe even be able to run something of it. So let's give it a go. So the Lynx cover is now back on, and I'm going to use this little one to reset or restart the Cerbo battery. So we'll do that. So that comes in here, and that starts up. It says Cerbo BMS welcomes you, which is a good sign. Then let that start up. We have 98.7 state of charge, which is good. And let's turn this on. No, it's this one. And it will be that one. That should then send power into the Lynx distributor, which in turn should send power to the MultiPlus. So let's see if we can find the on-off switch here. And nothing. So that's interesting. Oh, we have another one on the floor here. So let's turn this one on and that one on. Back to the inverter and the on switch. Okay, so it did something. I can hear a click and it says inverter on, which sounds positive. There's no overload alarm, there's no low battery alarm, no temperature alarm. Mains isn't plugged in. Bulk, absorption and float. I need to read up on some of these, but it looks like it's on. So if I turn this off and connect this one, female domestic plug, we might be able to run something from it. Let's do it. With the female domestic plug now connected to the cable that goes into the AC out of the MultiPlus II. We can now connect this light. It's only 160 watts, so I'm going to be a little bit kind to the system for its initial test. So let's connect this here and let's start up the system. So that is on and that is on. I now have, turn this off, I think so maybe. So we'll turn that back on. So it powers up, there's a little bit of a hum. So in theory, I should be able to switch this light on if everything is connected. Yep, so we have light. So we're now getting the power from the Cerbo battery all the way through the Lynx into the inverter, and we get AC 230 out so that we can run the test light of 60 watts. So that's obviously nothing, very little, but it's a good start. That 60 watt light equals 0.58 amp current. So we're now on a state of charge of 98.7. So when you are not using the battery pack over the cold winter months, it's good to store it between 40 to 60% state of charge. So at some point I need to run this down to that level, because there will be times during the winter month now where everything slows down a bit and I won't be able to use it. You can still draw power from the battery pack, although it gets a bit colder and below zero, but you should never charge a lithium-ion or lithium iron phosphate battery pack below zero, because it causes issues. I'm going to go through all the different guidelines around storing these batteries in a cold temperature. For the next time, I'm going to make sure that I replace these 35mm 2 cables that can handle roughly 240 amps with the 70mm 2, which can handle 485 amps. Because right now the 300 amp fuse I have in here for the motors is larger than the cables themselves. So if I had a short or anything that the fuses didn't pick up on for whatever reason, I would melt these cables. So I might as well set it up the way it's going to be on the boat, which is that these cables will be 70mm 2. So I'm going to buy 2 meters of the black and 2 meters of the red, so I can replace these ones with the right sized cables, and then we can play around with the motor as well. As mentioned, it's heading towards winter and it's getting a bit cold, so I looked into what I need to do to preserve these batteries and not damage them, so how to handle them over the winter months. And what I've learned and what's important is that I can't charge these if the temperature of the batteries is below zero, either of these cells, because it can lead to something called lithium plating, which can permanently damage the batteries. So that's a big no-no. If I'm going to store these and not use them for a long period of time as well, I should store them in 40 to 60% state of charge. So right now I'm quite high, so I'm going to try to get that down. It's recommended to keep these batteries in around 0 to 10 degrees Celsius, just to make sure that the electrolyte freezing doesn't take place. It's also recommended that I use active heating, so I am ordering 2 pairs of heat mats that will sit under the cells themselves, which means that I will have to take the first battery pack I built apart, and luckily I haven't put the batteries in the second one yet, so when I get the second one I can put that in there as well. And those heat mats runs straight off the BMS and will make sure that the battery packs are in a good temperature between 0 and 10 degrees. I will also make sure that I use a little bit of passive heating, which is basically just putting them in a box that is isolated. So the actual aluminium box that I will be using on the boat to put them in, I might as well design and build them now before it goes too cold, and then I can put a little bit of insulation around those and put the batteries in those boxes. That's another way to make sure that they don't get too cold. So you can still use these batteries although it's cold. They will hold a nominal charge, but they will struggle to provide an energy to load. So for example, at 0 degrees Celsius, the reduction in discharge capacity is 10 to 20%. Minus 10 degrees Celsius is a reduction in discharge capacity by 30 to 40%. Minus 20 degrees Celsius is a reduction in capacity between 50 and 60%, and minus 30 degrees Celsius has a reduction of discharge capacity by 70% or more. So if I ever plan to do any kind of high latitude sailing, then I definitely need to make sure that these batteries are in a good temperature to be able to power the boat. So that's something to keep in mind. We might as well connect the Cerbo GX power lead as well to the 48 volt pack. So it comes with a power lead that has two 10mm lugs at the end. As I don't have a fuse connected to one of these that is small enough, I might as well connect it to the actual main ins of the actual Lynx distributor itself. So in the actual boat, I might take this current from either the Orion TR481230, or I might take it straight from the 48 volt. The good thing about the Cerbo GX, one of the good things, is that it can take anything between 8 and 70 volt DC. So it can handle quite a wide range of the voltage. So that gives you a lot of options of what to connect it to. So for now, I'm going to connect it to the 48 volt, which means I need to disconnect the battery and make sure there is no load and that these wires are not live. And then I'm going to put it at the back of this piece here. With the Cerbo power cables connected, we should, when I switch on the battery load, see something going on here, hopefully. And as the GX touchscreen 70 takes its power from the Cerbo GX, we might also be able to power up this one. So let's take a look. Power on, and is something happening down here? Yeah, so we have an Wi-Fi access point, and it says when it is, so I guess I will have to connect it to Wi-Fi something. I need to read up on that. But let's see what happens on the screen itself. So we'll take this off. Ta-da! That is very nice to see. It says starting. So we now have a screen. Notifications, nothing. 1904. And I'm not sure if this one is, the Cerbo automatically speaks to the inverter. But if I switch the inverter off, we can see what happens. I don't think so. I probably need to have a cable between them, unless it's clever enough. So we'll switch that on. And also, I guess we can put the light on as well. So there's a load. So at the moment, it doesn't show anything on battery and doesn't show anything on anything. So I guess there's a little bit of configuration that needs to be done here so that it can communicate with the inverter as well as with, for example, the Orion. I don't think it communicates with the Lynx, but there's definitely protocols for all of these to be able to speak. So that is something for the next episode for me to figure out. But so far, it's progress. Well, we have the system up and running. I might as well see if I can update the firmware. So here it says Henrik Samsung. That is my phone. Oh, disconnect. That's not what we want. We want connect. So that is disconnected. Password. Can I do that here? Okay, so we have internet connection connected. So let's go back to, I think we had one saying firmware, and then online updates, check only. No, we don't want to check only, we want to check an update. Check an update, press to check. Okay, so press to update to version 3.66. Sounds like a good idea. So downloading and installing firmware 3.66. You can see some percentage in the background there. So I'm going to let this run and probably leave it here. It's now rebooting after the confirmation of the firmware installation. And we're back up and running again. So at least we know we have the latest firmware. to-do list for next episode, I need to make sure I get this 70mm 2 cables, as I said, so I can connect the motors to the Victron Lynx distributor. I also want to figure out and read up on how I make sure that the Cerbo GX speaks to the MultiPlus. I also want to print the covers for these two, because they are scaringly open now and something can go wrong. I also want to figure out if for the Orion I'm going to get a mega fuse that is small enough to be able to handle this 30 amp, because right now they sell only 300 amp 200 amp fuses, but nothing smaller. So I need to figure out that one, unless I connect the Orion straightly to these 2 points from the back here and then put a fuse on the actual cable itself. That's probably potentially the way I'm going to go. And I need to work out a placement for the smart shunt in terms of where on the battery cable it will sit best, as well as you can print some nice looking plastic covers to make sure that these points aren't as open as well. So I'll probably download those files and print that as well. And that is probably a good place to stop and wrap up for tonight. Big thank you for watching this episode 16, and as always, a big thank you for all the help that I've received over the period of doing these different episodes. If you're new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe. If you have any concerns, questions, or just general advice, please stick them in the comments and I will respond within 24 hours. And I hope to see you guys next time. Take care.